The birthday cake had 18 candles on it. My mother had made it herself, chocolate with vanilla frosting. My favorite since I was a kid. She was smiling as she brought it to the dining room table where my stepfather Rick and I were sitting, but the smile did not reach her eyes. It never did anymore, not since the pills started. "Make a wish, sweetie," Mom said, setting the cake in front of me. Her hands were shaking slightly. They always shook now. I closed my eyes and made the same wish I had been making for 5 years, since Rick had entered our lives. I wished for my mother to be healthy again, to be the person she was before the pills, before the depression, before whatever had broken her spirit and left this hollow shell wearing her face. I blew out the candles. Mom clapped. Rick smiled, that smile of his, the one that never quite looked genuine, that always seemed to be calculating something behind his eyes. 18 years old, Rick said, leaning back in his chair. A man now, legally an adult. That means you can make your own decisions, sign your own documents, manage your own affairs. Something about his tone made my stomach clench. I guess so. It also means you have access to the trust fund your biological father left you. For $1 million, if I remember correctly. I glanced at Mom, but she was staring at the cake, not meeting my eyes. Yeah. Dad's lawyer is supposed to contact me tomorrow about setting up access to the account. That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about tonight, Rick said. He stood up and went to the kitchen, returning with a folder. I have some papers here that I need you to sign. My name is Tyler Morrison, and on my 18th birthday, I discovered that my stepfather had been slowly poisoning my mother for 5 years as part of an elaborate plan to steal my inheritance. This is the story of how I went from high school senior to FBI informant overnight. This is the story of how I learned that the man who had pretended to love my family was actually a monster. And this is the story of how I had to grow up fast to save my mother's life. But let me back up and explain how we got to this moment. How my family went from happy to broken in the space of 5 years. How a man named Richard Harrison, who everyone called Rick, had systematically destroyed everything my father had built for us. My biological father, James Morrison, died when I was 12. Heart attack at 43, sudden and shocking. One day, he was coaching my little league team, teaching me how to throw a curveball, laughing at my jokes about the weird kid in my math class. The next day, Mom was waking me up at dawn, her face red and swollen from crying, telling me that Dad had collapsed at his office and did not make it to the hospital. The funeral was huge. Dad had been well-liked, successful, the kind of person who made friends easily and kept them forever. His business partners gave eulogies about his brilliance as a software engineer. His college friends shared stories about his sense of humor. His brother, Uncle James, who Dad had been named after, talked about growing up together and how Dad had always been the responsible one, always planning ahead, always trying to take care of everyone. That planning ahead meant he left behind substantial resources for us. Life insurance that paid out $2 million, investment accounts and retirement savings that totaled another $2 million. Plus the house was paid off, and there was money in college funds. My father had been meticulous about financial planning, had always said that his job was to make sure we would be secure no matter what happened. The money was structured carefully. Mom got enough to live on comfortably, to pay all the bills, to never have to worry about keeping the house or affording groceries or paying for my school activities. The bulk of it, for $1 million, went into a trust for me that I would access when I turned 18. Dad's lawyer, Mr. Chun, explained it all to Mom and me at a meeting 2 weeks after the funeral. James wanted to make sure Tyler had security and opportunities, Mr. Chun had said. This trust will provide for college, for starting a career, for buying a house someday. With conservative investments and smart management, it should last Tyler's entire life and beyond. He never has to worry about money the way James worried when he was young. Dad had grown up poor. I knew the stories, had heard them many times. How he had worked 3 jobs to pay for community college. How he had eaten ramen for months to afford textbooks. How he had built his career from absolutely nothing. Just determination and talent and relentless hard work. He had been proud of what he had accomplished, but he had also been very clear that he did not want me to go through the same struggles if he could prevent it. Tyler should focus on finding what he loves to do, not on survival, Dad had always said. Money should be a tool to build a good life, not an obstacle to overcome. So he had made sure I would have that tool. For $1 million, waiting for me at 18. It seemed like an impossible amount of money to 12-year-old me, fresh from losing my father, unable to understand that financial security did not make up for his absence. For the first year after he died, Mom and I grieved together. It was hard, brutal some days, but we supported each other. We talked about Dad constantly, remembering his jokes, his advice, the way he used to make silly voices when reading bedtime stories, even after I was way too old for bedtime stories. We cried together. We laughed, remembering funny moments. We slowly learned how to live in a world where he was a memory instead of a presence. Mom went to a grief support group at the local community center. The counselor there had emphasized how important it was to process grief with people who understood, to not isolate yourself in pain. So every Wednesday evening, Mom would go to her group meeting, and I would stay home and do homework and wait for her to come back with stories about the other people there. The widow whose husband died in a car accident, the man who lost his wife to cancer, the woman whose son overdosed, all these people who were trying to figure out how to keep living after losing someone essential. Then, 13 months and 2 weeks after Dad died, Mom came home from grief group with someone new. His name was Richard Harrison, but everyone called him Rick. He said his wife had died of cancer 2 years earlier. He was 40 years old, worked in sales, seemed like a nice enough guy. He had made Mom laugh during the group session, she said. First time she had really laughed in months. He asked if I wanted to get coffee sometime. Mom told me that night, just as friends, to talk about grief stuff with someone who gets it. Are you going to? I asked. I was 13 by then, old enough to understand that Mom getting coffee with a man felt weird and wrong, like she was replacing Dad. I don't know. Maybe. It might be nice to talk to someone who understands. The grief group is helpful, but it is only once a week. And your friends. She trailed off, but I knew what she meant. Her friends had been great right after Dad died, bringing casseroles and offering help. But after a few months, they had drifted away, back to their own lives, leaving Mom alone in her grief. So she went for coffee with Rick. Then coffee became dinner. Then dinner became him coming over to watch movies. Then, 6 months after they met, he asked her on an actual date. And Mom said yes because she was lonely, because he seemed to understand her grief, because moving forward felt like the healthy thing to do even if it felt wrong to me. I did not like Rick from the start, though I could not articulate why. He was pleasant enough to me, asked about school, about sports, about my friends, brought me little gifts, sometimes comic books or video games, trying to win me over. But something about him felt off. The way his smile never quite reached his eyes. The way he always seemed to be watching Mom and me, calculating something. The way his pleasantness felt rehearsed, like he had practiced it in a mirror. But I was 13, then 14, and what did I know? Mom seemed happier with Rick around. She smiled more. She started wearing makeup again, caring about her appearance. She went back to work part-time at the graphic design company where she had worked before Dad died. She was healing, everyone said, moving forward with her life, finding love again. They got engaged 8 months after they started dating. Fast, everyone said, but they were both adults who had been married before, who knew what they wanted. And Rick was so devoted to Mom, so attentive, always making sure she had everything she needed. He was the perfect partner for a widow trying to rebuild her life. They got married in a small ceremony at a nice restaurant. Just family and close friends. I was 14 and uncomfortable in my suit, standing up as Mom's witness, because Rick said it would mean a lot to her to have me involved. Uncle James pulled me aside before the ceremony and asked if I was okay with this, with Mom remarrying. "She deserves to be happy," I said, which was not really an answer but was all I could manage. "She does," Uncle James agreed. "But Tyler, if this guy ever does anything that makes you uncomfortable, anything at all, you tell me immediately." "Understood. He is fine. He is just not Dad." "Nobody is going to be Dad. But that doesn't mean you have to accept someone who is not good for you and your mom." I nodded, appreciating the concern, but not really understanding why Uncle James looked so worried. Everything was fine. Mom was happy. Rick was nice to us. We were moving forward, building a new normal. The changes started small, so small I did not notice at first. Mom started sleeping more. She said it was just exhaustion, that she had not been sleeping well since Dad died, and her body was finally catching up now that she felt safe and supported. Then she started having headaches. Rick took her to the doctor, who prescribed pain medication, then anxiety medication, because the doctor said grief could manifest as physical symptoms. "It is all connected," Mom explained to me. "The grief, the stress, the physical symptoms. The doctor says with the right medications, I should start feeling better soon." But she did not get better. She got worse. More pills for the headaches. More pills for the anxiety. New pills for depression that the doctor said was probably underlying all the other issues. Within a year of marrying Rick, my mother had gone from taking no medications to taking 7 different prescriptions. And she changed. The woman who had been healing, who had been going back to work, who had been rebuilding her life, started to fade. She quit her job, said she was too tired to keep up with the demands. She stopped seeing her friends, said social interaction was too exhausting. She stopped doing the things she loved, the painting and reading and yoga that had been part of her life before. Rick was so supportive through all of it. He took over managing her medications because she kept forgetting which pills to take when. He took over the household finances because she said thinking about numbers made her head hurt. He drove her to doctor appointments, spoke for her when she was too foggy to explain her symptoms, made sure she had everything she needed. Everyone said how lucky Mom was to have found such a devoted husband. How many men would stick around when their new wife got sick? How many would take on the caretaker role with such dedication? Rick was a saint, people said. A real partner. I did not think he was a saint. I thought something was wrong, but I could not explain what. Mom was sick, that was obvious. But there was something about how Rick managed her illness, how he was always there with the pills right when she needed them, how he controlled every aspect of her care, that made my stomach clench with unease. By the time I was 16, Mom rarely left the house. She spent most days in bed or on the couch, sleeping or staring blankly at the TV. The medications made her drowsy, made her speech slurred, made her seem like she was not fully present in her own body. She was a ghost of herself, barely there, dependent on Rick for everything. And Rick had systematically cut her off from everyone else. Uncle James tried to visit, and Rick always had an excuse. Mom was sleeping. Mom was having a bad day. Mom was not feeling up to visitors. Eventually, Uncle James stopped trying, though he would text me sometimes asking how things were. If Mom was doing any better. Not really. I would text back. She is pretty out of it most days. That doesn't sound right, Tyler. Has anyone gotten a second opinion on her treatment? Rick says she has the best doctors. that they're doing everything they can. But I was starting to have doubts. I had internet access. I could research medications. And the combination of pills Mom was taking did not make sense. Some of them should not be prescribed together. Some of them were being used off-label for conditions Mom did not seem to have. And the dosages seemed high, higher than the normal ranges I found when I looked up each medication. I tried to talk to Mom about it when Rick was not around. Mom, do you think maybe you should get a second opinion? Maybe these medications are not right for you. Rick knows what he is doing, sweetie. He talks to the doctors. He understands all the medical stuff better than I do. But you are not getting better. You are getting worse. These things take time. The doctors say we just need to find the right combination of medications. How many combinations have they tried? You have been on pills for over 2 years now. At what point do you say this is not working? Tyler, I appreciate your concern, but you do not understand how complex this is. Rick is taking good care of me. I just need you to be patient. But I was not patient. I was terrified. My mother was disappearing in front of me, and nobody seemed to notice except me. And I was just a kid. Who would listen to a 16-year-old saying he thought his stepfather was doing something wrong? Especially when Rick had positioned himself as the devoted caretaker, when every adult in our life praised him for standing by Mom through her illness. I started watching Rick more carefully, paying attention to his patterns, his behaviors. I noticed he was very particular about giving Mom her pills himself, never letting her take them on her own. I noticed he kept all the medications in a locked cabinet in his bedroom, said it was for safety so Mom would not accidentally take the wrong thing. I noticed how he monitored her constantly, always knowing where she was, what she was doing, who she talked to. It felt like control, not care. But I had no proof, just instinct, just the feeling that something was deeply wrong in our house. I counted down the days until I turned 18, until I could access the trust fund and get my own place and take Mom with me. 2 years felt like forever, but I made a plan. I would stay close for college, maybe get an apartment nearby. I would convince Mom to come stay with me, to get away from Rick and his controlling presence. I would help her find new doctors, get second opinions, gradually reduce the medications until she could think clearly again. I just had to survive until 18. Just had to make it through 2 more years of living with Rick and watching Mom fade away. And then I could save her. Except Rick had been planning longer than I had. And on my 18th birthday, he showed me that I had underestimated how ruthless he really was. I looked at the folder he had placed on the table next to my birthday cake. What kind of papers? Nothing too complicated. Just some financial documents related to your trust fund. Your father set things up in a very complex way. Lots of legal language. I have been working with his lawyer to simplify everything, so it will be easier for you to manage. Rick opened the folder and pulled out a stack of papers. This is a power of attorney document. It gives me the authority to manage the trust on your behalf until you are 25. That way you can focus on college and your future without worrying about investments and tax implications. Every alarm bell in my head started ringing. I don't think I want to sign that. Tyler, you are 18 years old. You do not know anything about managing money, about investments, about taxes. This is $4 million. You could make mistakes that cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. I am just trying to protect you. I can hire a financial advisor. I don't need to sign over power of attorney. Rick's expression changed. The fake warmth disappeared, replaced by something cold and hard. I think you should reconsider. For your mother's sake. I felt my pulse quicken. What does Mom have to do with this? Everything. Rick glanced at Mom, who was still staring at the cake, her hands shaking worse now. Sarah, why do not you tell Tyler what we discussed earlier? Mom looked up, her eyes unfocused and glassy. Whatever pills she had taken today, they had her pretty out of it. Rick says it would be better if he manages the money. He knows about these things. He can help you. Mom, I don't want his help. I want to manage my own inheritance. Tyler, please. Her voice was small, frightened. Just sign the papers. It will be easier for everyone. Easier for Rick, you mean? Rick stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. Okay, I tried to do this the nice way. But since you want to be difficult, let me be very clear about the situation you are in. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through something, then turned the screen toward me. Do you know what this is? I looked at the screen. It showed what appeared to be a medication log, dates and times and dosages. I don't know, some kind of medical record. This is a record of every pill I have given your mother for the past 5 years, the prescriptions her doctors gave her, and the extra medications I have been adding without their knowledge. My blood went cold. What are you talking about? Your mother's addiction, Tyler. Her dependency on medications. Her inability to function without the pills I give her 3 times a day. I did that. I caused it. Deliberately, methodically, over 5 years. He sat back down, completely calm, like he was discussing the weather. I started by switching some of her legitimate anxiety medication with higher doses. Then I gradually introduced opioids, just small amounts at first. By the time I got her dependent, I made sure she could only get her pills from me. No doctor's prescription, no pharmacy trail. Just me, controlling her supply. I felt like I was going to be sick. I looked at Mom, who had tears running down her face, but said nothing. She just sat there, shaking, trapped. You poisoned her, I said, my voice shaking with rage. You spent 5 years poisoning her and making her dependent on you. I prefer to think of it as long-term planning, Rick said. See, I knew about your trust fund before I even met your mother. I did my research after I saw your father's obituary, found out about the life insurance and the investments. For $1 million, held in trust for the son, accessible at 18. That is a lot of money. Money that could belong to me if I played this right. You married my mother to steal my inheritance. I married your mother to get close to the money, yes. But I needed leverage over you, Tyler. I needed something that would make you cooperate when the time came. So I made your mother need me. Made her so dependent on the medications only I can provide that she will literally do anything I tell her, including convincing you to sign over your trust fund. I was shaking with fury and horror. I am not signing anything. Yes, you are. Rick pulled out another folder. Because if you do not, I will make sure your mother never gets clean. In fact, I will make sure she does not survive another month. He opened the second folder and showed me more documents. Medical records showing Mom's supposed conditions. Pharmacy records for medications I knew she did not actually need. And then, most horrifying, a little plastic bag with white pills inside. Do you know what fentanyl is, Tyler? It is a very powerful opioid. Very easy to overdose on, especially if someone has been taking it without knowing if their tolerance is not what they think it is. One wrong dose, and your mother does not wake up. Tragic accident. Addicts overdose all the time. Nobody would question it. You are threatening to kill my mother. I am explaining the consequences of your choices. You sign over the power of attorney. I gradually wean your mother off the medications over the next few years. She recovers. Everyone is happy. You refuse to sign, and I make one phone call to my supplier, get some hot pills, and your mother has a tragic accident. He leaned forward. Do you really want to be responsible for your mother's death over money, Tyler? I stared at him. This monster who had been living in our house for 5 years, who had systematically destroyed my mother while pretending to care for her, who had planned this entire nightmare just to steal from a dead man's child. I need time to think, I managed to say. You have until tomorrow morning. Your father's lawyer is coming at 9 a.m. to help you set up access to the trust. You will sign my power of attorney papers at the same time, or I start making arrangements for your mother's unfortunate overdose. He stood up, walked over to Mom, and kissed the top of her head. She flinched, but did not pull away. He was her supply. She was trapped. Happy birthday, Tyler, Rick said. And then he went upstairs, leaving me sitting at the table with my mother and my untouched birthday cake. As soon as I heard Rick's bedroom door close, I moved to sit next to Mom. Mom, we have to get you out of here. We have to go to the police. We cannot, she whispered. Tyler, you do not understand. I need the pills. I cannot stop taking them. The withdrawal, it is. She started crying harder. I tried once, when you were at school. Just stop taking them for one day. I thought I was going to die. The pain, the shaking, the nausea. I cannot do it. You can, with proper medical help. There are detox programs, hospitals that specialize in this. Rick will not let me go. And even if I wanted to, Tyler, he has pictures, videos of me taking the pills, buying them from his supplier. He says if I try to leave, or if I tell anyone what he is doing, he will make sure I go to prison for drug possession. He is the one who got you addicted. But I am the one taking them. I am the one who looks like a drug addict. Who will believe me? She grabbed my hands, her grip weak and desperate. Just sign the papers, Tyler. Give him what he wants. I do not want you to lose your inheritance, but I cannot go through withdrawal. I cannot risk him cutting me off. Please. I pulled away from her, my heart breaking. 5 years. 4 or 5 years Rick had been doing this to her, and I had not seen it. I had known something was wrong, but I had not figured it out in time to stop it. I went to my room and locked the door. I sat on my bed, trying to think through the rage and the fear. Rick had planned this so carefully. He had trapped my mother in addiction. He had isolated her from anyone who might help. He had documentation of everything that would make her look guilty if anyone investigated. And he had the means to kill her if I did not cooperate. But he had made one mistake. He had told me everything. He had shown me his hand, confident that I was just a scared 18-year-old with no options. He had underestimated how much I loved my mother, and how much I was willing to risk to save her. I pulled out my phone and did something I had been too scared to do before. I texted my dad's brother, Uncle James, who I had not seen much since Rick had entered our lives. Rick had gradually discouraged Mom from staying in touch with Dad's family, said it was too painful for her. Too many memories. Uncle James, I need your help. It is an emergency. Can you call me? He called 2 minutes later. I told him everything about Mom's deteriorating condition over the past 5 years, about the pills and the dependency, about Rick's threat tonight, about the trust fund and the blackmail. Jesus Christ, Uncle James said when I finished. Tyler, you need to call the police. Right now. I do not have proof. It is my word against his. And he has all this documentation that makes Mom look guilty of buying drugs. What he is doing is called coercion, extortion, maybe even attempted murder. The police will investigate. And while they are investigating, Rick kills Mom with a hot dose and makes it look like an accidental overdose. Uncle James, I need real evidence. I need proof of what he is doing that is so solid he cannot wiggle out of it. There was a long pause. What are you thinking? I am thinking I need to record him. Get him to admit on tape what he has been doing. Then we take it to the police with evidence they cannot ignore. That is dangerous, Tyler. If he figures out what you are doing, more dangerous than doing nothing? More dangerous than signing over my inheritance and hoping he actually keeps his word about weaning Mom off the drugs? He is a sociopath, Uncle James. He married my mother to steal from me. He has been poisoning her for 5 years. Why would I trust him to do anything except screw us over completely? Another pause. Okay, you are right. We need evidence. But Tyler, you cannot do this alone. Give me until tomorrow morning. I am going to make some calls, talk to some people. Do not sign anything tomorrow with the lawyer until I get there. Stall him somehow. The lawyer comes at 9. Rick will be expecting me to sign. Then stall until 9:30, 10 at the latest. Can you do that? I think so. Good. I am coming to help you. Tyler, you are not alone in this. We hung up, and I sat in my room, my mind racing. Tomorrow was going to be the most important day of my life. I was either going to save my mother or watch Rick destroy both of us. I did not sleep that night. I sat at my desk, making notes of everything Rick had said, every detail I could remember. I went through my memories of the past 5 years, writing down every suspicious thing I had noticed. The way he controlled Mom's medications, the way he had isolated her, the way he always seemed to be calculate, something behind his fake smiles. At 3 a.m., I heard my bedroom door handle turn. Locked. I held my breath, listening. Footsteps in the hallway outside. Rick, checking to make sure I was still here, that I had not run. After a minute, the footsteps retreated. At 7 a.m., I heard Mom up, moving around downstairs. I heard Rick's voice, calm and pleasant, asking how she slept. Playing the devoted husband. I wanted to go down there and smash his face in, but that would not help Mom. I needed to be smart. Needed to play this right. At 8:30, Uncle James texted, I'm outside. Don't let on I'm here. Just stall the meeting. I'm working on something. At 8:55, the doorbell rang. Dad's lawyer, Mr. Chun, arriving right on time. I heard Rick answer the door, heard the pleasant greetings. I came downstairs, my stomach in knots. Tyler, Mr. Chun said warmly. He had known my dad for 20 years, had helped set up the trust. Happy birthday, son. 18 years old. Your father would be very proud of you. Thanks, Mr. Chun. We sat down in the living room. Rick sat next to me, too close, his presence oppressive. Mom sat in the corner, already looking half asleep from whatever pills Rick had given her this morning. Mr. Chin pulled out his briefcase and started explaining the trust documents, how the money would be transferred to an account in my name, how I would have full control over investments and withdrawals, how the trust would provide a monthly income while preserving the principal for my future. It is a very well-designed trust, Mr. Chin said. Your father wanted to make sure you were taken care of, but also that you did not do anything foolish with the money at a young age. This structure gives you access, but also protection. Actually, Rick interrupted, we have been discussing a modification to the arrangement. He pulled out his power of attorney papers. Tyler has decided it would be better to have someone more experienced managing the trust for a few years. I have generously offered to take on that responsibility. Mr. Chun frowned. I was not aware of this change. May I see the documents? Rick handed them over. Mr. Chun read through them carefully, his frown deepening. Mr. Harrison, this is not a modification. This is a complete transfer of control. Tyler would have no access to his own trust. Just until he is 25. It is for his own protection. I do not think James would have wanted this. Tyler, are you sure this is what you want? I glanced at Rick. He was staring at me intently, his expression neutral, but his eyes delivering a very clear message. Sign or else. I hesitated. Where was Uncle James? What was I supposed to do? I need to use the bathroom first. Can we hold off for just a few minutes? Rick's jaw tightened. Tyler, Mr. Chun has other appointments. We should not waste his time. It will just take a minute. I stood up quickly and headed for the downstairs bathroom. My phone buzzed in my pocket as soon as I closed the door. "Uncle James, police are outside. They want to talk to you. Can you get out of the house without Rick noticing?" "Back door. Give me 2 minutes." I flushed the toilet for sound cover, then quietly unlocked the bathroom window. It was small, but I could fit through. I climbed out, dropped into the side yard, and ran for the back gate. Uncle James was waiting by his car with 2 police officers. "This is my nephew Tyler," he said, "the one I called you about." One of the officers, a woman with sergeant stripes, stepped forward. "Tyler, I am Sergeant Rodriguez. Your uncle contacted us this morning with some very serious allegations about your stepfather. I need you to tell me exactly what happened last night." I told them everything. Every detail of Rick's confession, his threats, his admission that he had been drugging my mother deliberately for 5 years, the blackmail, the threat to kill her with a fentanyl overdose if I did not sign over the trust fund. This is coercion, extortion, and if we can prove he has been adulterating her medications, it is poisoning, Sergeant Rodriguez said. But right now it is your word against his. Did he show you any physical evidence of what he claims to have done? He showed me a log on his phone of all the drugs he has been giving her, and he had a bag of pills he said were fentanyl. That is something, but I need to be honest with you, Tyler. Building a case like this takes time. Investigations, forensic analysis of medications, medical records. It could be weeks or months before we have enough evidence to arrest him. And in that time, your mother is still in his control. So what do I do? Just sign over my inheritance and hope he does not kill her anyway. Actually, the other officer said, there might be another option. Have you ever heard of wearing a wire? 20 minutes later, I was sitting in the back of Uncle James's car, having the strangest conversation of my life with 2 police officers and an FBI agent who had been called in because of the financial fraud aspect of the case. The problem with cases like this, the FBI agent, Special Agent Morrison, explained, is that the perpetrator is usually smart enough not to confess to crimes in front of witnesses. But your stepfather already made a mistake. He told you everything last night, presumably because he thought you were trapped and would not dare to report him. He underestimated how much I hate him. I said, "Good. We are going to use that. If you are willing, we would like to wire you with a recording device. Go back in there. Tell them you are ready to sign the papers. But before you do, try to get your stepfather to repeat his threats on tape. Get him to admit what he has been doing to your mother. If he is as arrogant as you say, he might just brag about it. And if he does not, if he is smart enough to keep his mouth shut now, then we have a longer investigation ahead of us. But Tyler, I have been doing this for 15 years. Men like your stepfather, they cannot help themselves. They love to boast about how clever they are. If you push the right buttons, he will talk." "What buttons?" "Act like you are going to sign, but you are angry about it. Make him think you are bitter but beaten. Men like him cannot resist gloating when they think they have won." They fitted me with a wire, a tiny microphone hidden in my shirt. They explained how it worked, how to make sure I got clear audio, how to stay safe. If at any point I felt threatened, I was to use a code phrase, "I need some fresh air," and they would come in immediately. "We will be listening the whole time," Sergeant Rodriguez said. "Right outside, in an unmarked van. Anything happens, we come in. You are not alone in there, Tyler." I went back to the house through the front door this time. Mr. Chin was still in the living room, looking confused and annoyed. Rick was pacing, clearly irritated by the delay. Mom was in the same spot, barely conscious. "Sorry about that," I said. "Stomach issues. All the stress, I guess. Are you ready to proceed?" Mr. Chin asked. "Yeah, about those power of attorney papers." I sat down and looked directly at Rick. I want to make sure I understand exactly what I am signing. You are going to control my entire inheritance until I am 25. 7 years. That is a long time. It is for your own good, Tyler. You will understand when you are older. Will I, though? Because it seems like this really benefits you more than me. Rick's expression hardened slightly. I am trying to help you, trying to teach you how to manage money responsibly. But if you would rather make mistakes and lose your father's legacy, that is your choice. Of course, if you choose not to sign, there will be consequences. For my mom, you mean? Tyler, Mr. Chin interrupted. What is going on here? Is someone pressuring you to sign these documents? Just family dynamics, Rick said smoothly. Tyler is upset about some discipline issues. Typical teenager, testing boundaries. I leaned forward, looking directly at Rick. Tell Mr. Chun what you told me last night, about Mom's medications, about how you have been controlling her supply for 5 years. Rick's eyes narrowed. I have no idea what you are talking about. Yes, you do. You showed me the log on your phone. All the extra drugs you have been giving her. The fentanyl you threatened to use if I did not sign over the inheritance. Tyler, I think you might be having some kind of breakdown. I understand you are stressed about the money, but making up wild accusations is not going to help anyone. I am not making it up. I stood up, putting emotion into my voice that was not really acting. I was furious. You told me everything. You admitted you married my mother to get access to my trust fund. You said you made her dependent on pills deliberately, so you would have leverage over me. Mr. Chin stood up as well. Mr. Harrison, is any of this true? Of course not. Tyler, I think you should sit down and calm down. You are not thinking clearly. I am thinking perfectly clearly. I turned to Mr. Chun. He showed me evidence. A bag of pills, he said, were fentanyl. He threatened to give them to my mom and make it look like an accidental overdose if I did not sign over the trust. Rick laughed, but it sounded forced. This is absurd. Sarah, tell them I would never do something like that. Mom looked up, her eyes glassy and confused. I do not know what is happening. Exactly, Rick said. She does not know what Tyler is talking about, because none of it is real. Tyler, I know you miss your father, and you do not like having me as a stepfather. But making up these kinds of lies could get you in serious legal trouble. Slander, defamation. Then sue me, I said. I am telling the truth, and you know it. I think I need to pause this meeting, Mr. Chen said, gathering his papers. Tyler, I would like to speak with you privately before we proceed with any signatures. Mr. Harrison, perhaps you should step outside. This is my house, and Tyler is my client. His father entrusted me to protect his interests. I am not comfortable with him signing anything under these circumstances. Rick stood up, his facade of calm finally cracking. Fine. You want to throw away your inheritance, Tyler? You want to be responsible for what happens to your mother? On your head. What is that supposed to mean? It means that your mother depends on me for her medication. If you are accusing me of terrible things, if you are creating this hostile environment, maybe I do not feel comfortable being her caretaker anymore. Maybe I let her deal with her addiction on her own. Cold turkey. No pills. No support. Just withdrawal and pain. That is medical neglect, Mr. Chin said. If she is genuinely dependent, she needs professional treatment. Then Tyler can pay for it with his inheritance. Oh, wait, he just made sure I am not signing over control, so he does not have access to that money yet. Does he? Medical treatment is expensive. Rehab programs cost tens of thousands of dollars. Hope he has that much in his savings account. You are threatening her, I said. Right now, in front of witnesses, you are threatening to withhold medical care from my mother unless I sign over my inheritance to you. I am not threatening anything. I am simply stating facts about the situation. Really? Because last night you stated some different facts. You showed me your phone with the log of every illegal drug you have been giving her for 5 years. You showed me a bag of fentanyl and told me exactly how you would kill her if I did not cooperate. You want me to repeat all the details you shared? Because I remember every word. Rick's face went pale. For the first time, he looked genuinely worried. You are making this up. Am I? Then why do you look so scared? If I am just a lying teenager, why do you care what I say? I am not scared. I am angry. You are defaming me. In my own home, in front of your father's lawyer. This is unacceptable. What is unacceptable is marrying my mother so you could steal her dead husband's money. What is unacceptable is spending 5 years deliberately creating a drug addiction so you would have a hostage when I turned 18. What is unacceptable is threatening to kill my mother if I do not give you $4 million. Prove it, Rick snarled, his composure completely gone now. You cannot prove any of this. You have no evidence, no recordings, nothing but your word against mine. And who do you think people will believe? A respected man who has been caring for his sick wife for 5 years? Or a spoiled teenager who wants to control millions of dollars and does not like that his stepfather is trying to protect him from his own inexperience? You are right, I said quietly. I did not have any evidence. Last night, when you told me everything, I was too shocked to think about recording you. That was a mistake. Rick relaxed slightly. Exactly. So stop making these wild accusations and... But this morning was different. This morning, I knew you were a threat, so I made sure to document everything you said. His eyes widened. What are you talking about? I am talking about the wire I am wearing right now. The recording device that has been capturing every word since I walked back in the house. Every threat, every admission, all of it on tape. Rick lunged at me. He actually lunged, trying to grab me, probably to rip off the wire, or to hurt me or both. But before he could reach me, the front door burst open, and 4 people came rushing in. Sergeant Rodriguez, the other police officer, Agent Morrison, and Uncle James. Federal agents, get on the ground. Rick froze, his hands inches from my shirt. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Rick slowly raised his hands. This is entrapment, he said, his voice shaking now. You cannot use anything he recorded. I was coerced. Actually, Agent Morrison said, pulling out handcuffs, you were recorded making threats and admissions of committing multiple felonies. That is exactly what we can use. Richard Harrison, you are under arrest for extortion, coercion, medical fraud, and reckless endangerment. You have the right to remain silent. I stood there, shaking, as they handcuffed Rick and read him his rights. I had done it. I had actually done it. Mr. Chin looked completely shell-shocked. Mom was crying, whether from relief or fear, or the pills I could not tell. Uncle James came over and pulled me into a tight hug. You did so good, kid. Your dad would be so proud of you. But it was not over yet. Rick was arrested, but Mom was still addicted, still needed help that I could not provide alone. Sergeant Rodriguez seemed to read my mind. Tyler, we are going to call an ambulance for your mother. She needs to be medically evaluated and possibly admitted for supervised withdrawal. Do you have anyone who can take care of you until we sort out the living situation? He can stay with me, Uncle James said immediately, for as long as he needs to. Mom was taken to the hospital. The doctors said withdrawal would be hard, possibly dangerous given how dependent Rick had made her. She would need to stay inpatient for at least a week, maybe longer, but they could help her. With proper medical supervision, she could get clean. Over the next few days, the full scope of Rick's crimes became clear. The pills he had been giving Mom were a combination of prescription medications he had somehow been obtaining illegally and street drugs from a dealer he had connections with from his past. Because yes, Rick's dead wife's story was also a lie. He had never been married before. He had been in prison for fraud when he supposedly lost a wife to cancer. He had targeted my mother specifically after researching my father's obituary and finding out about the trust fund. The medical log he had shown me was real. He had kept meticulous records, probably because he was proud of how clever his scheme was. The authorities found the phone, found the evidence, found everything they needed to build a case that would put Rick away for a very long time. The bag of fentanyl was real too. Testing confirmed it was laced with something even more dangerous. If Rick had given that to my mother, she would not have survived. He had absolutely been prepared to kill her if I did not cooperate. I gave my official statement to the FBI, sat in an interview room for 4 hours, telling them everything I knew, everything I had seen over 5 years of living with a monster. They told me I had done the right thing, that without my testimony and the recording, Rick might have gotten away with it, that I had probably saved my mother's life. I did not feel like a hero. I felt exhausted and angry and sad. 5 years. For 5 years this man had been poisoning my mother, and I had not stopped it. I had suspected, had known something was wrong, but I had not acted until he literally threatened to kill her. "You were a child," Uncle James said when I voiced these thoughts. "You were 12 when he entered your lives, 17 when you first started really suspecting something. What were you supposed to do? You were right that no one would have believed you without evidence. But Tyler, you got the evidence. At 18 years old, you faced down a man who was threatening to murder your mother, and you beat him. You saved her. That is what matters." Mom came home after 12 days in medical detox. She was weak, shaky, but clear-eyed for the first time in years. The real her was coming back. We sat in Uncle James's living room, where we were both staying temporarily, and she cried and apologized and told me everything from her perspective. How Rick had started so subtly, just offering to manage her medications after Dad died. How he had slowly increased dosages, added new pills, until she did not know what she was taking anymore. How she had realized something was wrong, but by then she was trapped, too dependent to stop, too scared of what he would do if she tried to leave. "I wanted to protect you," she said. "He told me that if I ever said anything to you, if I tried to warn you, he would hurt you. I thought keeping quiet would keep you safe. Instead, it just let him get closer to his goal. It is not your fault, Mom. He did this. He is the monster, not you. But I should have been stronger. I should have fought harder. You were addicted. That is not weakness. That is a medical condition he deliberately created. You are fighting now. That is what matters." It took 6 months for the criminal case to go to trial. Rick's lawyers tried everything, claiming the recording was illegally obtained, that I had entrapped him, that his jokes about harming my mother were taken out of context. None of it worked. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury convicted him on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 28 years in federal prison. Rick was 43 years old. He would be 71 when he got out, assuming he survived that long. I sat in the courtroom when the sentence was read. Rick turned to look at me, his face full of hatred. He mouthed something that might have been a threat or a curse. I stared back at him, unafraid. He had no power over me anymore. He had no power over my mother. He was just a bitter, evil man who would spend the rest of his life in a cage. Mom and I moved into a new house, bought with part of the trust fund. A fresh start, no memories of Rick. She continued therapy, both for the addiction and for the trauma of what he had done to her. Some days were harder than others. Recovery was not linear, but she was fighting, really fighting, for the first time in years. I started college, majoring in criminal justice. I wanted to understand how people like Rick operated, how to catch them, how to protect others from predators who pretended to be rescuers. Maybe I would become a lawyer like Mr. Chun, helping protect vulnerable people from fraud. Maybe I would work in law enforcement like Agent Morrison. I had time to figure it out. Uncle James remained a constant presence in our lives. The family connection we should have had all along if Rick had not deliberately isolated us. He helped Mom manage her medical appointments. He helped me understand the trust fund and how to invest it wisely. He became the father figure I had lost when Dad died, the support system Rick had tried to eliminate. A year after Rick's conviction, I ran into Mr. Chun at a coffee shop near the courthouse. He had testified at the trial, had been crucial in explaining how Rick's power of attorney documents would have given him complete control over my inheritance. "Tyler," he said, shaking my hand, "I have been thinking about you. How is everything?" "Good. Really good. Mom is almost 2 years clean. I am finishing my first year at college. We are doing okay. I am glad. You know, your father always said you had a good head on your shoulders, that you were smart and thoughtful, and would make good decisions when it counted. I think he would be very proud of how you handled everything. I was scared the whole time. Courage is not the absence of fear, Tyler. It is acting in spite of fear. You did that. You faced down a man who was threatening your mother, got him to confess to crimes, and helped put him away. At 18 years old. That is remarkable. I thought about that conversation later, about courage and fear and what it means to be an adult. Rick had tried to make me believe I was just a kid, too young and stupid to understand money or the world. He had underestimated me because of my age. But being an adult was not about age. It was about taking responsibility when it mattered, making hard choices when easy ones would have been safer, standing up for people who could not stand up for themselves. I was 18 years old when I wore a wire to catch my stepfather. I was 19 now, still figuring out life, still making mistakes. But I was also someone who had stared down evil and won. Someone who had saved his mother's life. Someone who had turned a devastating situation into justice. My name is Tyler Morrison. I am 19 years old. I am a college student, a son who protected his mother, and someone who learned that sometimes the most adult thing you can do is refuse to be intimidated by someone bigger, older, or more powerful than you. Rick had counted on me being too scared to act. He had built his entire plan around the assumption that I would fold under pressure, would prioritize my inheritance over my mother's life, or that I would be too naive to see through his manipulations. He was wrong about all of it, and now he is spending the rest of his life in prison, while Mom and I are building a life free from his shadow. We have family dinners with Uncle James. We go to therapy. We talk about Dad sometimes, remembering the good times, honoring his memory by living the life he would have wanted for us. The trust fund is invested wisely, managed by a real financial advisor who Uncle James helped me find. Someone trustworthy, with references and credentials, and no interest in stealing from a dead man's family. The money will be there for college, for a house someday, for whatever future I choose. But more important than the money is the lesson I learned that birthday night when Rick showed me who he really was. I learned that predators rely on their victims being too scared or too isolated to fight back. I learned that speaking up, even when it is terrifying, can save lives. I learned that being young does not mean being powerless. I get emails sometimes from people who read about the case in the news, other victims of financial predators, of family members who exploited them, of people trapped in situations they thought they could not escape. They ask how I found the courage to act, how I knew what to do, how I did not just give in and hope for the best. I tell them the truth. I was terrified. I did not know what I was doing. I made decisions on instinct and desperation, not careful planning. But I loved my mother more than I feared my stepfather, and that love gave me the strength to do what needed to be done. If there is any message in my story, it is this: you are not powerless. Even when someone bigger, older, more experienced tries to convince you that you have no options, you do. There are people who will help if you reach out. There are authorities who will listen if you speak up. There are ways to fight back, even when the odds seem impossible. Rick tried to convince me that I was just a kid who did not understand the real world, that I should be grateful for his guidance and hand over control of my life and my money. He was counting on me believing that narrative, accepting that adults always know better, that questioning authority is disrespectful or dangerous. But sometimes authority needs to be questioned. Sometimes adults are wrong, or corrupt, or evil. And sometimes a scared 18-year-old with nothing but determination and a borrowed recording device can bring down a monster. Thank you for listening to my story of growing up faster than I ever wanted to. I have left 2 more stories on your screen, both from young men who learned that sometimes becoming an adult does not happen at 18. It happens the moment your family needs you to be strong. Click on whichever one speaks to you. And if you want to join our community of people who understand what it is like to be forced to grow up overnight, that notification bell is waiting. Until tomorrow, remember, age is just a number, but courage defines who you really are.